Hi, my name is Josh, and I'm a watchaholic. Welcome to Horology Insanity. What is up, my watch friends? So, check this out. Today, I want to take another look at this sweet Aventurine Zelos Starfighter. Now, if you haven't already seen it, my last video was an auto review, so we're going to link that up here in the upper right. You can go check that out, learn more about the watch, because in this video, I'm not going to be talking as much about the watch, my experience with it, the specs, etc., except for maybe the case dimensions and how it wears, because what I want to do in this video is I want to look at how this watch compares in shape, size, design, and really wearability compared to I don't want to say all the other Zelos lineup, but like most of them. And you'll be able to kind of get a sense for what I'm talking about. So yeah, this is going to be predominantly a Zelos video. And I think most of the folks who watch it are probably going to be Zelos addicts like I am. And so I'm hoping that you'll be able to get a grasp for what this is like in person, even if you haven't gotten yours yet, or if you ended up not getting one, and compared to all the other Zelos in the lineup. And that'll kind of tell you if you want to go hunt for one or not, maybe. So first and foremost, I want to compare it to the smallest Zelos in the lineup, and that is the Salmon Nova. Now, keep in mind, almost every watch I show you is going to have completely different movements. This one is not on the factory bracelet. This is on a beads of rice, so don't let that throw you. But you can see here that the left, I think it's 38 millimeter is what they say. It does not have a bezel. It's got just like a fixed bezel, fixed case. Here it does have a domed sapphire crystal, but you can see that is not as pronounced as what we have here on the Starfighter. And so this is an interesting one, because I say in my other video, and I would say it again here, that this Starfighter wears a little small for me. The 41 case diameter right here, it doesn't wear like a 41 case diameter. And so that one is interesting to me, but you can definitely see it's way bigger than the Nova. I want to kind of go in size. And so the next one I'm going to call in size is the 40 millimeter GMT Horizons. Now, the reason that I talk about this, and I talk about it more in my other video, so again, go check that one out, but the way that the Starfighter wears small, in my opinion, is the exact same experience I get from the Horizons. The 40 millimeter case doesn't really wear like a 40 millimeter watch. Just like the Starfighter says 41 millimeters, it doesn't wear like 41 millimeters. And it's mainly because the bezel and dial diameter are smaller. And so this is a very similar type of feel to where, even though the Starfighter, you can see, is much larger, well, I don't want to say much larger, even in person, it comes across as larger than the Horizons. So if you're looking for an Aventurine and the Horizons was too small for you, then maybe this one, like there's an Aventurine Nova, it's going to be way too small too. So I think as far as Aventurine Zelos options go, this is about the largest that you're going to get, maybe until he comes out with an Aventurine Skyraider. Maybe, I don't know if he's even going to think about doing that. But you can see here that the experience in person, it's very similar between these two, in that they wear it slightly smaller than what the case diameter would otherwise lead you to believe. All right, we're going to go to the next 40 millimeter. I'm going to go with the Mako series. And so let's just get this held up. This is my Mako Frost. Y'all know this is one of my favorite Zelos watches. And you know, when it comes to like case thickness and whatnot, the Starfighter is so much nicer, and it's more sleek. Just the way that he did the case shape. You know, some people aren't a big fan of these lugs. I like them. I really think that the overall case design and everything on the Starfighter is fantastic. But when you just look at the top down, like you would looking at it on your wrist, you can see that these kind of look the same, or in some ways, particularly in the dial diameter, the Mako almost looks a little larger. And so it's weird how that works. It's weird how the visual effect works. And you can see that even though the Starfighter is supposedly bigger, it kind of doesn't look it. And so yeah, there's that. All right, let's keep trucking along. The next 40 millimeter I want to look at is the Swordfish 40 millimeter. Now this is stainless steel. This is specifically the mother of pearl dial. When you get it in some light, you can see the play that it has. Otherwise, it just kind of looks like a very dark blue or sometimes even black. But this is 40 millimeters. The one on the right is 41 millimeter. And you can see the bezel on the Swordfish is much larger and more prominent than it was on the Mako. And so where the Starfighter bezel almost looked a little larger and more prominent than the Mako did, but now it doesn't when you set it next to the Swordfish 40. And so of course the Swordfish is a much more like aggressive design. Now you can see that there are still some cues with the turn down of the lugs, except for, you know, the Starfighter shaved out right here, where otherwise the Swordfish usually comes across. I'm curious to see what the Spearfish case is going to look like, because it's supposed to be a more refined version of this. So you can just see kind of how it wears. And on wrist, aside from the lug to lug, well, except for the male end links, which everybody complains about, I don't have a problem with that because of my wrist size. But these wear very similar on wrist to one another, and you wouldn't think that. You wouldn't think that when you just looked at the specs and when you were looking at this one and comparing that case size. Now let me keep going. We've got the 42 millimeter Swordfish. Now this one's titanium. Don't let that throw you. Of course, this is stainless steel. The other ones that I was showing you were all stainless steel, but this is the forged carbon Swordfish. Now this is the 42, and you can look to see that again, it's a mil larger, but it looks so much bigger than the Starfighter does. Now that's for several reasons, right? One, you just look at the overall case shape and thickness. Look at how prominent and thick this bezel is over here on the Swordfish compared to how sleek and slim the bezel is over on the Starfighter. Now, of course, the Starfighter is not a rotating bezel, and so that could be one of the reasons for that. But yeah, you just look at the overall dial size. I've come to learn that dial size and dial diameter is almost as good of an indicator for how it's going to wear as the case size and the lug to lug. And so I'm really starting to look more closely at, okay, aside from all these other specs, what is the dial size? Because you'll see that that'll make the watch wear a lot differently compared to how it is with the bezel. So there's that put together. Let me keep trucking along now. What do I want to hold up next? Well, I said I was going to do Zelos, but this next one really isn't a Zelos. It's the only other watch in my collection that comes close to the kind of Daytona-ish design and overall aesthetic of this Starfighter, and that is my infamous Yachtona. I think that's what Jody so wonderfully named this one. This is the Loreo Daytona homage. I don't know. Some people hate these things. I love them. Get them on AliExpress. But yeah, I'm assuming they still make them. I don't know. I've got a bunch of these Loreo watches and I've had really good luck with all of mine. But yeah, this is the kind of Yachtmaster bezel on top of the Daytona-esque dial and chronograph pushers. And so when I just compare the size of these two next to each other, you know, one of the things I talked about in my other video, my not a review, was that the Starfighter only has 50 meters of water resistance, and partly I believe that's because the crown is not a screw down crown and they are not screw down pushers. And so the Loreo does have that, and a lot of other kind of sports chronographs do. And so it makes me feel like this Starfighter, it looks sporty. And so you kind of want it to be sporty, but then the water resistance is like, no, don't be too sporty now, my friend. Don't be too sporty, because some of your water sports might get me in trouble, might get me wet. So this is just an example. I wanted to set it side by side, but you can see very different styles. It's amazing what the bezel can do to change the look of a watch. And so I just found that really interesting. So I grabbed it when I was going through my collection because I was curious. Now I want to go up in size a little bit. Let's do this next. I think this is 42 millimeter ZX series. Now, of course, I'm wearing again my Blackbird. I was able to get this, and these chronographs were all in the same ZX series that Elshin did a while back. And he had two variants of them, the automatic with the Valjoux, and you can always tell which one it is by how thick it is. If I can get that, look at how thick that thing is because of the Valjoux 7750. He also made ones like this that were not as thick, even though still way thick compared to like the Starfighter. This is the Seiko Mechaquartz. So I thought it interesting to compare these side by side because, and maybe this is my own fault, but when I heard Elshin say he's going to come out with another chronograph, my mind immediately thought, okay, he's going to make a better version of the ZX because he's been doing that. The Mako, here, let me hold this up. This Mako is a better version. It's a slimmer, sleeker, just better version of the Mako V1 and V2. And I have both the V1 and the V2, and I like them, but this V3 is sweet. And so I thought he's been doing that with the Swordfish and with the Swordfish 40mm. And so I just thought, okay, Elshin, he's doing another chronograph. He's gonna make a better version of the ZX. And in a way, if you want to look at the Starfighter that way, you can, but they're completely different. They're so different that you can't call the Starfighter a better version than the ZX because they're just such different watches. They wear completely different. You look at the case, look at how sleek and refined that is. You know, the old ZXs have the big slab side case, and when you hold it up next to, you know, the Valjoux 7750, so this is a custom one of one Elshin made blue dial. So this is a rare one, but you'll see that it's just thick, so thick. So let me hold that up here. Look at how thick that is. Now, one of the reasons Elshin went with the ETA movement in the Starfighter is because of the thickness, or I should say to try to make it more thin. And so the Valjoux 7750 is a fantastic and well-known and historical movement, but I think at some point we got to be real. It's a chunky monkey, right? It's so thick. And I think to some degree that can be a turnoff. As we continue to get more refined watches that are thinner, sleeker, wear better, like this Starfighter does and is, then we're going to start to see that you can't shove a 7750 movement in it. And so that's why Elshin went with the ETA. So I'm trying to see if I can hold up all three. This is the difference between the Mechaquartz and the Valjoux. So the automatic is over here on the left. The Mechaquartz is here. And so I'm trying to do this in a way that doesn't let the watches touch. And then you hold this up next to it. It's a world of difference. Like it's like, oh man, I don't know. It's so different. I am curious though to see, let's talk about just real quick. I'm waiting for the Spearfish because he said it's going to be a more refined version of the Swordfish case. And I'm curious to see, I wonder if he's going to go as crazy with chopping the case out as he did with this. I don't know that he will, but I'm curious to see what the Spearfish case looks like the more that we talk about, you know, him making sleeker, nicer designs of all of these. I find it really interesting. So we've got all those held up. Let me go up with the next one. This is the Skyraider. So this is specifically the V2. You'll notice the crowns on this are very similar, and in my opinion they may even be identical. And so this is this is an updated crown to the V1 Skyraider, which did protrude a little bit further out to like here, and so he did shorten that up a little bit. I will say that the grip and functionality of these are fantastic. They are so much better than the ones on the ZX series. So for example, these right here look fantastic, but they're really not great to use. Crown. The pushers are fine. In fact, I think I like the ZX pushers more than the Starfighter pushers. I like that wedge panel design a lot more. And so, but the crown, I do give hats off to the crown on the Starfighter because it's better than the ZX, and it really is like the exact same crown that's in the Skyraider series, specifically the V2, what we're showing here. This is the blue Meteorite Skyraider, by the way. And I will say, yeah, let's take a look at the bracelets real quick, because this is, I think Elshin has been inspired by this to create this, but he like amped it up to level 11 to get it thin, to get the polishing down so it really jumps off and it has a ton of play in the light. And so if you don't like shimmery type things, you may not like this Starfighter bracelet. This thing shines in person the way that a Jubilee bracelet does. And so if you're not a big fan of that sparkly shine play in the light, the ZX bracelet definitely doesn't have that. You see it's got some polished edges and whatnot, and so, well, not polished, they're all brushed, but you can see that they have different angles, and so it does play in the light, but it's nothing compared to what you get in this, because that, it really does have full polish all the way around here and in the center. And so this one's going to play in the light kind of the way a Jubilee does. It's the best explanation, or likening it to something that I might be able to do. But you can see here, let's hold these up side by side, you can see how he's tried to do a lot thinner bracelet on this. So not only is he chopping the case down to make it more sleek, he really cut down on the bracelet material and thickness, which does make the Starfighter wear a little bit lighter, a little bit sleeker, a little bit more elegant. And so the clasp are exactly the same. I talk about that in my other video. Not a fan of this clasp on this bracelet, but that comes with the caveat that I love this clasp. So it's really hard for me to say, like, I love this clasp, but I don't love the way that it's paired with this bracelet. I think that he needs a more slimmer and refined clasp on this. So, you know, that is what it is. You'll also notice that there's some taper on the Starfighter, and there was not a whole lot of taper. In fact, there may not be any taper on this Skyraider bracelet. And so you can see that that also helps with kind of the wearability and feel. And for all of those reasons, the Starfighter is really nice. It really is. I will say, on wrist, aside from it wearing a little small compared to what the 41mm case shape says, this thing is a joy on wrist. It really is. Like, it really wears just absolutely wonderful. Now, again, I have an 8-inch wrist, so I do not mind the giant lug-to-lug with these mail-in links. Right? I love the thinner profile. I love the case shape. The turn down lugs bother some, they don't bother me. I love this thinner bracelet. I love the taper. Y'all know I don't love the clasp, but I will say, if you are over 7 inches, this is my guess, maybe find some other reviews, see what wrist size they have. But if there's somebody like let me go conservatively, 7.25 and larger, I think you're going to love this, and I think you won't even mind these end links here. Now, I'm curious to see if anybody puts this on a leather or a rubber strap. I left it on the bracelet. This is a loaner. I left it on the bracelet because the bracelet is so nice. So I did take the time to resize this to fit me, but I did not try it on any other straps because honestly, I enjoyed wearing it on this one. If I owned this watch, I would keep it on the bracelet. Even with the clasp being a little clunky the way it is, I would still wear it in this configuration. So that's just me. Last but not least, let's hold it up to the big mama jamma. This is the new Great White version 2. 43mm, and it's basically a larger version of the Mako, and so you'll be able to see the similarities there. But this is one of the larger watches in the Zelos lineup. I'll have more videos on this coming soon. I'm going to compare it next to the Horizon's 43mm, along with some hammerheads and other things, so that'll be interesting to see. But when you put these next to it, yeah, you can definitely see that this Starfighter wears nowhere near as large or as thick as this Great White. Definitely completely different watches. These two watches really aren't even comparable. I'm only setting them side by side so that you can kind of see that if you think that this might be a little small for you, there are other options out there. And this one, spoiler alert, I prefer the Great White V2 over the Horizon's 43. Just personal opinion. So, but that'll be coming in another video soon. So anyway, my friends, let me know, what do y'all think? If you have the Starfighter and you had a similar experience that I had with the sizing and how it wears in wrist compared to what the specs say, let me know down in the comment section. I really am curious to hear it. I'm also curious to hear, is the male end links a deal breaker for some of y'all, right? Is this effectual lug to lug being 53 millimeters? Did that just kill this watch for some of you? I'm guessing depending on your wrist size, it might, right? It didn't bother me, it didn't affect me, but it would affect some. So did you end up still getting this and then putting it on another strap? I'd be curious to hear if anybody did that. And if so, what kind of pairings are you finding? What strap pairings are you finding that look really good with this? I may start a thread in the Zelos group just asking for Starfighter strap pairings, and let's see what kind of awesome things we can find. But anyway, check back in the next one. I'm going to be comparing the dials next. I want to really look at this Aventurine, and I want to compare it with a couple of others that I have sitting here in front of me, and that would then wrap up this series. So until we talk again, my friends, please remember what really matters, and that's not watches. Keep the insanity sane.